We're at Big Ben's British pub in Charlotte. I'm here with the new director of scouting at Charlotte MLS, Thomas Schaling. Thomas, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming here today. We've got some Heineken on the go because you're from the Netherlands, a bit of home from you there. How are you finding Charlotte so far?
Oh, I really love it. I'm really looking forward to moving here on a permanent basis and just working together with a lot of excited people and looking forward to it.
And you've done a lot of exciting things back in the Netherlands, of course. Can you tell us a bit about your time at PSV Eindhoven?
So I spent 7 years there working in a scouting team and it was a really great time. We worked with a lot of foreign players, bringing a lot of Latin American players, won quite a few championships, 3. It was a really great time there.
What is scouting and why does a team need it? Why can't you just go and buy a ton of players that you like?
Well, I think you need to be very professional about it. You need to be prepared. I think you need to be proactive about the players that you recruit. You can't just sit around, wait for players to come to you. That's not how it works. You can't just sit around and wait for agents to come to you and offer you certain players. You need to know the market, weigh up all the players against each other, see who are your best options.
Okay, and you're a director of scouting. What exactly is your role going to entail here in Charlotte?
I'll be one of the primarily responsible people for recruitment. Then on the other hand, I think a really important part of it is forming the team of scouts that's going to help us do that. So that's part of the process we're in at the moment. And then of course, further down the line, we're preparing to bring in the right players to help us be successful.
Okay, and are we talking about scouting the 30-man roster for the team here to start next season, or are we talking about scouting academy players, young players? Is the scope pretty wide?
It's mostly first-team players, but I will be helping out with academy players in the higher age categories.
So what exactly does scouting entail? Are you going to the streets out there to look for players? Are you finding agents? Are you going to stadiums? Are you going to type on your computer until some wizardry comes up? How does it work exactly?
Well, I mean, taking it to the streets is a very romantic idea of scouting nowadays. That doesn't really happen that much anymore. We'll be looking at tournaments and matches in stadiums and looking at players globally. Then again, we have a shorter timeline than other clubs do, so we have to take a more targeted approach to find the right players right away, as soon as possible. So we'll be using all of our scouts in different areas of the world. They'll be responsible for their region, and then we'll cross-check players with each other. Also, we'll be using data and video scouting, video analysis of players. So it's different styles to scout, and we try kind of blend it all together to find the best possible targets.
So tell me more about this video scouting and how does that work? Is it possible to find out everything you need to know about a player without seeing them live?
Not everything, but I think it's a very efficient way of finding out the first important things about a player. So it can save us a lot of time, a lot of resources when scouting, so that we don't spend too much time on players that aren't really interesting to us. And it's a good way to watch a lot of matches from a player, so maybe we can watch him 5 to 10 times before we watch him live. It kind of depends on the timeline and the importance of the player as well.
Okay, you mentioned having scouts all around the world as well. Where do you think Charlotte MLS players are going to come from? Maybe a few from Europe, a few from Latin America perhaps?
Sure, yeah, both. I mean, we're going to be scouting a lot in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Latin America, so both South, Central America, North America obviously. And we're looking into Africa and Asia as well. So we're going to be basically covering the entire globe.
Okay, and what about the local players? How many local players do you anticipate being in this team? Are you going to get out there to teams in the Carolinas and have a look around them?
Yeah, of course, it's going to play a big role in our philosophy. We want players from the Carolinas. For some part, it might be a little bit more of a long-term planning because these young players might not be into the first team right away. But we are a club that's going to be creating a lot of opportunities for young players in the future.
There's lots of fairly complicated MLS roster rules. Does that make your job a bit harder? You can only have a certain amount of international players, for example. You have to have some homegrown players and so on. Does that make it tricky for you?
Yes, it makes it a little bit trickier, obviously, especially with the budgeting. Then again, working at PSV, which is a relatively rich club in Holland, but it's not like a club that can just go out there and buy any players. So I'm used to some restrictions. We're not Manchester City or Real Madrid or something. So now with Charlotte, the rules are a little bit different and more complicated, but I think I've made it my own so far, and we're working well together to make sure that we get everything into the budget.
And how do you feel about designated players? Are you going to be scouting some of the big boys out there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a big part of it in MLS, obviously, and but just because it's a designated player doesn't mean that we're just going to assume that they're still good. We're going to be analyzing them really thoroughly and checking if they're still the right fit for us, if they still have the legs, if they still have the motivation to play for Charlotte MLS. So it's not because they're the big earners that we'll be like, okay, we'll just see where it goes. They're probably still good. We're going to be analyzing them very thoroughly.
Question that a lot of fans want to know is the time scale of things. When a player's going to start arriving, do you think, in Charlotte for this team?
I think we could have the first few players in the summer, so July, August, when we have our transfer window, which in MLS is not the primary transfer window, but it could play an important role for us. But then most of the players obviously won't be here until January, February.
Is it a good thing that you think you've got a blank slate here rather than coming to a club which has an established system of scouting? You get to kind of do things how you want to do?
No, that is a big pro, and I'm really enjoying working with the people we've hired so far. Also within my scouting team, we've found the first people are ready to join our team. So I'm really excited about that, and it's just a different way of laying out the puzzle. I mean, usually in a European club, you'll have 70 or 80% of your squad ready, and you just look at the pieces of the puzzle that fit in every summer or winter. Now with us, we just have to find the first 2-3 pieces of the puzzle to put in and then build around that. But that makes it all the more exciting.
Final question for you, Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me today. Why do you think MLS is going to be a success in Charlotte?
If I just look around at all the excitement and enthusiasm from the people here, just look at the deposits on the season tickets so far, and everyone I'm working with is so professional and so up for it, so energetic about making this project a success, about winning, about being profitable, what I've spoken about earlier as well. I think we have the right recipe for success.
We do indeed. We've got a recipe for a cheers right here. Let me feel it.